Hello, and welcome to our Play Now documentary on the National Theatre's production of J.B. Priestley's Time and the Conways. I'm Fenella Woolgar, playing Madge Conway. Madge is one of 4 sisters in the Conway family. The first and last acts of the play take place in their house just after the end of the First World War in 1919. The middle act takes place almost 20 years later, just before the beginning of the Second World War. The changing relationships between the sisters, our 2 brothers, Alan and Robin, our mother and various friends of the family, are enough to make the play a compelling drawing room drama. But what sets the play apart is its grounding in an understanding of time, which is very different from how we normally think of one year following the next. Let's find out more about it.
My name is Anthony Peake. I'm a writer, and one of the areas of fascination in my books is the concept of time and how we perceive time, and whether indeed time is a construct of the mind or not. This is the reason why today we're in this wonderful museum here up in Prescott on Merseyside. This museum has a wonderful collection of clocks and such like, and it's places like this that really give you the idea of exactly how time has developed through the ages and how we perceive time as well. J.B. Priestley was fascinated by time theories to the extent that he actually wrote 3 time plays. And these plays were I Have Been Here Before, Time and the Conways, and An Inspector Calls. In these plays he deals with the idea of how time is perceived by the people involved. He also wrote a fascinating book called Man and Time, which was published in 1961. And in this he discussed the ideas of precognition and the ability that human beings have under certain circumstances to see the future. So clearly this was something that really interested him, and this book is very well worth reading if you get the opportunity, because it will give you an idea of exactly what Priestley is trying to convey in his plays. J.B. Priestley was strongly influenced by an Anglo-Irish aeronautical engineer by the name of J.W. Dunn, who wrote a fascinating book in 1927 called An Experiment with Time. And J.W. Dunn's ideas were really very, very popular with the intelligentsia in the 1930s. James Joyce, for instance, was fascinated by the idea. Virginia Woolf, T.S. Eliot. Dunn suggested that we observe time linearly. We perceive it from the past to the present to the future in a sequence. I've always used the analogy, it's rather like somebody looking outside of a train window. You're looking out of the window and you're looking straight out through the window. As you do so, a station comes past. That station in the distance when you can't see it is your future. As the station comes into your vision, it becomes your present and then becomes your past. Now effectively that's how most human beings perceive time, and that's how observer 1 perceives time. However, in serial time ideas, it is like observer 2 is somebody sitting on the top of the train, and that person can see the tracks into the future and can see the past as well as part of a continual present. In the play Time and Conways, it's a play in 3 acts, and in the first act you have Kay Conway celebrating her 21st birthday party. As the act comes to an end, Kay goes into a form of trance-like state on stage. When Act 2 starts, you see Kay in clothing of the late 1930s. The stage is a good deal more austere. It gives a wonderful idea of the changes of time and the way people change during that time. And she's clearly far older. So something peculiar has happened. Now initially the audience won't necessarily make this link, they'll just think it's a typical theatrical device of moving into the future. It's only as the act starts to come to an end that Kay starts to act oddly, as if she's a little bit confused. And what happens at the end of Act 2 into Act 3, Kay suddenly finds herself back in her own past, reliving 1919 again, with the knowledge of future events and the knowledge of how each of the characters will be affected by the events of that evening. And this is again Priestley suggesting that for some reason Kay has been able to access time 2 or time 3 within her own subconscious, and in fact has observed as observer 2 or 3 her own future, and has then gone back to being observer 1. And that's the device of the play, and that's the beauty of the play, because the play is also trying to convey J.B. Priestley's interest in how time changes us.
If you'd like to know more about time, you can read the article by A.C. Grayling in the programme, which is available from Ushers or from the NT Bookshop. Or you can see Jeff Forshaw and Anthony Peake live in our Experiment with Time and the Conways platform on July the 24th. For the cast of Time and the Conways, it was director Rupert Gould who helped us map our journeys through the interwar years. Here are some of my fellow company members to take you through some of what happened in rehearsal.
As a company, we put up lots of paper around the room, so a huge sheet of paper for each year that had gone past. So it's actually 19 years, but roughly 20. And for each year, we did collective research on what was happening in the world and in the UK. So events that would have affected our lives and how the country was changing, because that's obviously what the play is about as well. And then parallel to that, we had a page for things that were happening in our lives.
We all wrote a letter for each, a minimum of one letter for each year that passed to another member of the cast, which is just such a brilliant way of doing it, because on a basic level it makes you think about, what was I doing then, and who would I have told, and why would I be writing to the other person, because what are they doing? So that's fascinating, but also it makes you subliminally and subconsciously think, how do I feel about this person at that time? And how does my character feel about their situation?
These letters would be sent to our home addresses, so we'd get home at the end of rehearsals, and it was fantastic, and I'd have a whole pile of letters. K. Conway,
Things that you might tell one brother, you wouldn't have told your mother, perhaps. So people then started being quite clever and learning how private their character would be and who would know what information, what would have been shared. So it was fascinating to be part of it. Scott Ambler was the movement director, and he was fantastic. And he's worked a lot with Matthew Bourne and Rambert and things like that. So he's very open. It's a sort of a style of dance that he has and that he's been trained with, that it is really about observing people's physical characteristics. Like, I constantly talk with my hands, but the way people touch themselves without realising, or push their hair back. So we got sort of into quite minute details.
So I think the important one for you there is that one. And then the others, you can kind of sort of slide through a little bit in your own time. Where's a good point to pick it up from there?
You can't let the audience know what's going to happen in Act 3. So lots of things that you start seeing in Act 3, and you don't want the audience to go, oh, right, so this is how it happened, and oh, the irony. You've got to keep them with you. And Rupert, rightly so, said, well, I think that's, we need to make this quite abstract.
Scott, the choreographer, sort of helped with the staging of, I guess, the sense of this continual movement around a centre with sort of like time or a clock, and several gestures.
If Hattie's that central character as Kay, then all of us can sort of work around her and distort her reality. And as the pace sort of goes and whips into a frenzy, there are some sort of stylised movements which follow the characters, just to sort of make it more abstract and make the audience sort of pull back.
If you want to catch Time and the Conways at the National, time is of the essence. We're here on the South Bank until mid-August. You can find out more and book your ticket at www.nationaltheatre.org.uk.